Welcome everybody to Plant Families in Our Foods, Series 1, Week 2. Again, it's okay if you missed last week. I try to lead each class so that it's beginner friendly each time. So don't worry if you ever have to miss any classes. You can always join in whenever you like. And I'm really happy to have you here with me today. So you know in advance, I try to keep the classes fairly vocabulary light. But today, because of the subject matter, there's a bit more vocabulary than usual. But um, I think the point isn't necessarily to learn the vocab. The idea behind this class is to more understand what to look for when you're looking in plants and the processes. So rather than worry overly much about the vocab, I'd rather we focus on what's actually happening within our flowers or fruits that we're seeing today. And you can ask questions at any time, or you can ask me to clarify or repeat stuff. I'm happy to do all of those things. And I'm really excited to share our family with you today. One more thing is the class is about enjoying the plants in the sense that I identify as a botanist, but there's a lot of plants and a lot of families that I don't know. And that's okay, because what makes me a botanist is my enthusiasm to learn more of them and to keep diving in there. And so if you can relate to that, then I'd say that you are a botanist too. And so I hope that we will have fun today. Can everybody see? Okay, here we go. So to start with, we will have 3 pictures. And with each of them, we'll first take 2 minutes to draw what we can. It doesn't have to be perfect drawings. Just draw what you can, or you can make a diagram. And then after the 2 minutes, then we'll spend an extra minute adding any words and numbers to our pictures. So we'll start with our 2 minutes of drawing this now. So about 30 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. And now we can spend an extra minute adding any words, describing words, uh, labels, questions it reminds me of, observations and numbers, any of those to our pictures. About 10 more seconds. And there's our minute. So now we will go on to picture number 2. How y'all doing so far? Pretty good? Excellent. All right, so here is our second picture. And once again, we'll take 2 minutes to draw what we can of this, starting now. About 30 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. So now we'll take 1 extra minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures, starting now. About 10 more seconds. And there's our minute. Now we'll go to our third and final picture before we officially meet our family of the day. And one more time, we will take 2 minutes to sketch what we can. About 20 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. Now we'll take one final minute to add any words, observations, and numbers to our pictures. About 10 more seconds. And there's our minute. How y'all doing? Everybody doing all right? I see some thumbs up and some smiles. Okay. Y'all ready to meet the family of the day? All right, here we go. Officially, welcome to the rose family, also known as Rosaceae or Rosaceae, depending on how you say it. And it is named for the genus Rosa. Very straightforward. I was trying to look at the etymology and see if it meant anything beyond the flower or the color, but I couldn't find any deeper than that. But if anybody else finds any cool etymologies of this etymology, then I would appreciate that. So who was surprised that this is the rose family when you saw the others? Little? Or maybe not? Yeah, a little. So you see this rose here. This is the one that we think of, I'm imagining, when we think of roses. But what is really different about this one compared to the first 3 that we saw? And you can call out your answer.
The petals, the form of the petals looks so different from the formation that the rose conforms to.
Yep, you're absolutely right. These petals, they are different in the way that they're shaped. They're not spread out all flat. Instead, they're all puffed up, or like, kind of in a spiral up in the middle. And there's a ton of them. There's way too many petals. So naturally, the roses tend to have 5 petals, the wild ones. This is one that we have cultivated over a lot of time as humans. We started cultivating roses some, I don't know, I want to say like 3,000 years ago. This is one that you would not find in the wild. Why is that, do you think? Why wouldn't we find one like this in the wild?
Well, I have a wilder rose in my yard that's open and that allows pollination, and the bees are all over it. I can't see a bee getting into this very easily.
Exactly. This is so tightly wound that pollinators wouldn't be able to find their way in, or at least it would take them a lot more effort than they might be willing to expend. So that's a key reason right there. Another reason is that having this many petals takes a lot of energy. And in the wild, roses probably aren't going to find the amount of energy it would take to sustain this many petals. They only have that access to that because we provide them with all of the nutrients. So that's why we know that this one here is our cultivated rose as opposed to our natural ones. And I'm going to go back for a second. Does anybody happen to know what this plant is right here? Does anybody recognize it? Yep, Sarah, you're right. It's a blackberry. This is a blackberry. You can even see the little immature fruits right over here as they form. And then, does anybody know this one here? This one's a little bit more obscure. You might know this one as an ornamental, one that you might see growing as a street tree or in a botanic area. This one, I'm told that it's called Indian hawthorn, The name I've learned it at is Raphiolepis, which is a really, really fun one to spell here. Here we go, Raphiolepis. So that's what I'm learned that this one is. And some of them have this really incredible smell too when you walk by them. And then, does anybody know this one?
Is it in the fruit family, like an apple blossom or some sort of? No, because it's a rose, so never mind.
Oh, but you're very close. They are related. This here is an evergreen pear.
Oh.
It's this pear is mostly made as an ornamental. Again, something that is a plant that's more around just because we think it looks really pretty. But it is related to the actual pears. So that, yeah, this is an evergreen pear right here. And I like that you said apple blossoms because it reminds you of them, doesn't it? It reminds you of an apple blossom. That's because they're in the same family. And we'll find some more in just a moment. So we'll start out. I like to go over our basic flower diagram at the beginning each time. So this is a drawing that you might see in a textbook or something like this, although maybe their pistil wouldn't be nearly as big as the one I drew here. So we have a stem. We have our sepals, which are the little leaf-like appendages that are on the undersides of the flowers. Then we have our petals. Then we have our stamens, which make pollen, and then our pistils that make seeds. So the way I remember this is PSSP. Pistils make seeds, stamens make pollen. And so this is our basic flower diagram. And today, because of some of the interesting things I've been learning about since the last time I taught this class, I added a huge section on fruits in this one because we have a lot of fruits from this family. So to prepare for that, we're going to go a little bit in depth with the pistil. And again, it's not so much important to know the words, more it's important to know how they work and what they mean. So within a pistil, if we picture a pistil being sort of like a vase, the top of the vase has what we call the stigma. And that's where the pollen that's where the pollen gets stuck on the flower. That's where the pollen initially comes in, right here on the stigma. Then the neck of the vase is called the style. And that's significant because sometimes you might see more than one style sticking out of a flower, and that means that there's either more than one pistil or else that the pistils have been combined. But it's the sign that there's more than one pistil. So it's good to notice if there's more than one style sticking out. Then here we have the main part of the vase, which is the ovary. And within that, we have our ovules. The ovules are what go on later on to make the seeds of our plants. And the ovary itself in a true fruit is what goes on to make the fruit. So that's why this is important, is that when we think of fruits, this is the part that is responsible for fruits, or for true fruits. We're going to get more into that in a bit.
Can you repeat what you said? PSPS is pistils make seeds?
Yep, pistils make seeds and stamens make pollen. I say that because sometimes I would get the two terms mixed up and I would say, oh, pistils, pollen, stamen, seeds. And it's like, no, pistils, seeds, stamens, pollen. That's why I say it, just because it helps me. Do folks need another moment to draw some of what's here on the screen? Okay, then I will not rush ahead. Oh, also, are there any more questions so far? I want to make sure people get a chance to ask questions if they need. I'm glad you're loving this, Sarah. Yeah, does anybody else have questions? You can unmute and call out if you'd like to, or you can type them in the chat. Either way. No, that's okay. We have lots more opportunities to ask as time goes on. Okay, are we ready to go to the next page? All right, here we go. So once again, we have our basic flower diagram. I like to include this so that we can look and see how the family of the week looks a bit different, because it's important to be able to see where all those parts wind up, since they are all in different arrangements. And this is how we identify the rose family. A rose family has 5 sepals usually. Sometimes the sepals aren't all in one solid, I guess, form. Sometimes they'll be kind of split in the middle, so it looks like it will have more sepals than 5, but it's usually just 5. 5 petals, although sometimes the roses get a bit weird, which I think is partially why we were able to cultivate them to have so many petals. For example, a lot of times when I'm around strawberries, I'll see some random strawberry flowers having 6 petals instead of 5. So they're not always very consistent, but the overall pattern is 5. We will have a lot of stamens, like a lot of stamens. And sometimes, depending on which subfamily or tribe we're in of this family, we'll have either a lot of stamens kind of all piled up in the middle on this receptacle here, or sometimes we'll have maybe just a few, sorry, not stamens, pistils, a few pistils. But sometimes the pistils will be kind of in this cup right here, this little cup of the flower that we call a hypanthium. And then we'll just see maybe a few extra styles sticking out. So there's a lot of variation. And unfortunately, there's no one hard and fast rule. But what is good to remember is that the overall effect of the tons and tons of stamens and the pistils makes it look like it has a fuzzy center. And that's one of the key characteristics of our family. And to help with that, I have a list of characteristics as well. So yeah, 5 sepals, 5 petals, although they can be kind of inconsistent and sometimes they'll have more. A lot of stamens, 1 to many pistils depending on the species, and sometimes there's patterns within the tribes. And the reason why I crossed out subfamilies is because when I learned this, when I learned about Rosaceae, we had certain subfamilies that have now been reclassified into tribes, and it's very annoying. and then that's when I growl and say, oh, gosh darned botanists, even though I am one. So yeah. And the combined effects of the stamens and the pistils can make for a fuzzy center. A secondary characteristic is that oftentimes members of this family will have oval leaves, a lot of times with serrated edges. Now that's not always, but a lot of times. And sometimes if you have something like a rose, you'll see that it's not just a simple leaf, it's a compound leaf. So it has leaflets, and the leaflets themselves will be oval shaped with serrated edges. Also, some species, like I mentioned, will have a little cup that holds the ovary, and that's called the hypanthium. And again, the term's not important. It's just more important to know to look for that little cup beneath the petals and beneath the sepals. Oh, could the color of petals help us to recognize a rose species? That's a good question. I've seen a lot of variation. White seems to be one of the more common colors of rose petals, of Rosaceae, but there's definitely tones of pink and even yellow within them. So there's a lot of variation, but I like the way you think, Melian. A lot of them are white. So that's something to notice too. And because nature is tricksy, it's important to let the plant that's in front of you tell you, because nature will, we'll think 5, and then suddenly there'll be this one plant with 6 petals, and then maybe another one will have the stamens looking a little bit different, like osoberry, and then we're like, wait, what are you talking about, plant? And the plant's like, ha ha, I tricked you. And then you go, oh, okay, you tricked me, thank you. And so it's important to let the plant that's in front of you tell you. And also, even if a plant's not from Rosaceae, it helps to at least know what to look for, so that you can think, why does this remind me of the rose family? And that just knowing how to narrow down those characteristics, that will help you. It will help you to identify it. In fact, here, I'm going to go back for a quick second to one of the pictures to show. You know how I was talking about hypanthium? Here's an example of hypanthium right here. It's hard to really see it because it's very subtle, but it's sort of like a little cup right underneath. So I just wanted to say that that's a good example of hypanthium. And then we have our 5 petals here. A lot of times I've noticed that petals can fall off really easily in this family. And then we have, it's hard to see, I know that these probably in here are the stamens that make the pollen. It's hard to see exactly where the pistils are, but you can see that overall it looks like a kind of fuzzy center. So that might help a little bit to think about like that. Okay, so we're going to go forward again to, sorry. Okay, yeah, here we go. And I find it helpful sometimes to look inside. So this is a blossom off of our evergreen pear tree, again, the one we looked at earlier. And it might be, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but you can see right in here that there are that there are three styles coming out, which indicates that there might be three pistils combined underneath, but you can see 1, 2, and 3 in the middle here. And then meanwhile, all of the stamens on the outside. I like to look at sort of what the inside is like, because we can see the ovary is way down here in that cup that we were talking about before. So I think sometimes it can be kind of useful to look inside. Are there any other questions right now? There's no silly questions. If you need me to go over anything again, or yeah, any questions, I welcome. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, this might be a bit of a slightly off the wall question, but I was just noticing, it's really cool that this is the class we're doing today. I was just noticing there's some wild roses in the hedge outside, and last year they were like a double, like their flowers were double, and this year they've gone back to single. And there's like another rose a bit further down, and last year that was single, and this year it's double. And so is that something that like Rosaceae do, or is that maybe like something else, like a fungus or I don't know, or something?
That is so neat. I never heard about that before, and now I'm really, really curious. You're telling me about something brand new, and that's really exciting.
Oh, cool. I've never noticed it before. It's just because since I've been journaling, I noticed it last year, and then I was like, oh, this is exactly the same plant, but it's doing something totally different. What's it doing?
That is really, really cool. Yeah, I'd love to know any observations that you wind up having about them. And now I want to look up like singles to doubles. Now, sorry, I'm making myself a little note so that I can look this up, because that is really cool. Thank you for telling me about that. I think that's really cool. Oh, sorry, 1 second, please. Sorry, my son asking questions about cookies. Okay, so, but yeah, that is really cool. And so now I want to know more about the singles and the doubles, because I didn't even know about that before. Oh, and then Anna's asking subtribe and family new nomenclature. So originally, when I was taught this, there were 3 or 4 subfamilies within the roses, and then everything got shuffled around so that now there's something like 2 main subfamilies, and one of the subfamilies from last time got put within one of the others, and then within there's distinctions as tribes, and it's confusing. And like I said, it makes me growl slightly at the botanist for changing everything. But I'll be able to specify a little bit more later about which subfamilies things were in when we get to the fruits. Hopefully when I get to those, it'll help clarify a little bit better. So thank you, I appreciate that question. And so here we go. We'll go on to our next part. And here's one I would love folks to unmute and call out answers. What foods, and we've already talked about some, but still, what foods do you think are in the Rosaceae?
Peaches.
Peaches?
Strawberries.
Strawberries, yes. Who else? Any other ideas?
Apples.
Apples, yes. Oh, I see comments in the chat. Pears, apples, berries, some certain kinds of berries. We're going to get more into that in a second. Not guava, but that's still a good guess, especially because it has some commonalities with some of the fruits. Raspberries, yep, absolutely. Y'all ready to find out? Okay, we've got, oh, wait, did I miss? Yep, plums, yep, plums. So we've got false berries, which are our strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, rosehips. We've got our pomes, which are our apples, pears, quinces, loquats. And we have some stones, which are cherries, almonds, apricots, nectarines, plums, peaches, and pluots, and other fun hybrids. That's a lot of fruit. That's a lot. So these are some of the ones that we have. And we'll go into a bit more detail about what each of these mean. For one thing, even though the botanists say that these are false berries or false fruits, you know, that's just a term. It's not very nice to the plants to call them false. We can just, comfort the plants and say, you're real to me. But I'll explain a little bit in a second about what we mean by false berries and what kind of berry or what kind of fruits they are. Pome, I don't know if anybody here speaks French, but I'm told that pomme means apple in French. So I think that might be where the word pomme came from. It's another specialized kind of fruit. And we'll see that there are stones that are outside of this family because of what stone means. But this is a really huge group within our family. And so originally, these were the subfamilies that I learned. This was in the subfamily of Rosaceae. This was the subfamily Maloideae for apples, because Latin and, mal meaning bad, or malus for apple, because sometimes the botanists are mean. Oh, that's interesting to know about roses reverting to type due to influences from grafting. Yep, that doesn't surprise me. And then our stones here, this was what was in what we call amygdaloideae. And so now this is the main subfamily, and the Meloideae got put inside of it, and it's all confusing and named tribes, and I'm still not sure exactly what they're all called. But this was how I originally learned the subfamilies, and for me, that makes it easier to see the differences, to remember these traits. So let's go into it a little bit more. Pom is Latin for apple or fruit. Thank you. That's good to know. And so here we go. We'll go a little bit more into them. So we'll start with our so-called false berries, our strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. And so when we are looking at fruits, the question I try to keep in mind is which part of the flower becomes the part that we eat. So with true fruits, that is the part that is made only from the pistil that we talked about earlier. That's what we mean by true fruit. And so when it comes to what we eat with our strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries, the primary part of those is not made of the pistil. So botanically, what even is a berry? Well, a berry has thin skin. It has yummy, fleshy goodness in the middle, and it has seeds kind of sprinkled throughout that. Yep, stone fruits are drupes. Ray Bonto's ahead. Yep, stone fruits are drupes. We're going to be talking about that very soon. Oh, hi, Jasmine. Here, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to quickly make Jasmine my co-host. It's wonderful to see you. Here we go. You are now my co-host. And so our berries are like this. And so how are our strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries different? How would you say that they're different than this?
The seeds are on the outside.
Yep, that's a big one. They're on the outside. And also the main part, the main yummy goodness of the strawberry that we eat is not made from the pistil. So in a berry, the ovary becomes the part that we like to eat, like that. Even though I drew my pistil way too big on here, whatever. So that's sort of what happens in a berry. But in our friends here, it's the receptacle that becomes the main part of the fleshy fruit that we eat. So that's the part that we eat, is the receptacle. And so that's the significance there. And so we have special names for these too. I'll give folks a chance if they want to write this down, and then we'll talk about what they're called. And some of you, if you've been in Jack's classes during sharing time in recent weeks, you might have heard this. So this might be stuff you've already heard, but it always helps to go over it again. So it's the receptacle that we are eating. The way that works is that when we were looking at our picture, we saw that there was a mound of pistils in some of our fruits. That mound is on that receptacle. And after the flower gets pollinated, the receptacle swells. A lot of pistils that become seeds in a strawberry. Yep. Or as we would actually call it, a lot of pistils that become the fruits. Although the fruits are so united with everything else that the seed is pretty much taking up the most of the fruit itself, but there is a seed cover on top of it. So that's the fruits. So where are the fruits? So like I said, we start here with our pistils, our cute little golden pistils, and they're on a receptacle. And then after it's pollinated, you see that receptacle starts to swell. So the fleshy part, like I said, comes from the receptacle. And so this part in here, what we think of as seeds, they do have seed inside, but these are overall the fruits. So all of the 200 or so seeds that we have on our strawberry, it's really the 200 fruits that we have on our strawberry. So that's what it is. This is the fruit. And so we call this one an accessory fruit. And again, the vocab doesn't matter so much. It's more just about knowing how it works, that we have our fruits on the outside. And I even have, I was thinking about eventually making myself a purse or something like that that is in the form of a strawberry so I could have a proper accessory bag. And then it looks like I already have one. So I have an actual accessory bag, which I appreciate because it's an accessory fruit. Anyways, sorry. And so then with raspberries and blackberries, it's similar yet different. There is still a receptacle, except that it's a lot smaller. I think this one is called a torus, but I don't know. And the seed, or rather I should say the fruits, are on the outsides in these tiny little juice packets, individual packets of yumminess. So each of these is a fruit. And we call that an aggregate fruit because all of the pistils that formed the fruit come from just one flower instead of coming from more than one flower. And in this case, in both cases, we call them false berries or false fruits because the majority of the part that we eat comes from something that was not made by a pistil. Again, that doesn't matter so much, but it is nice to know how they work. So that is about those. Let me see here. So berries are stuff like tomatoes, blueberries, currants, etc. Yep, they are. That's exactly right. Blueberries are a real berry, and so are tomatoes. And interestingly, so is an avocado. We think about that big pit in the center as being, you know, something that covers up the seed, but it's not, it's the seed itself. So an avocado is also a berry, and our bananas and some others too. So meanwhile, we also have pomes in this family, and it's a special kind of accessory fruit. In this case, it's not the ovary and the pistil that has swelled up so much, although that does swell too. It's the hypanthium that we're eating, that little cup that holds the ovary. That's the main part of the apple that we're eating. And I'll be able to show you in a moment. I brought some samples with me. So these both swell up. And who here has cut open an apple and seen that kind of pithy bit that surrounds the core? Well, that is the former boundary of where the ovary was. So a lot of times if people don't eat the core, then that means that they're not eating the ovary. They're just eating the hypanthium. Sorry about that. That's a good question about pomegranates. And my answer with that is I honestly don't remember what pomegranates qualify as. I remember that they confuse me a lot. So I'll have to get back to you, but I appreciate that question a lot. So I will try to find out more about the pomegranates. And cucumbers are a berry. They're just a very special kind of a berry called a pepo. But that's a whole other story. But cucumbers are berries, you're right. So this is the poems. Does anybody have any other questions so far? I want to make sure I'm not going too complicated.
I'm seeing Ray Bonto had a question earlier. I'm not sure if you got to it. It says, so berries are stuff like tomatoes, blueberries, currants, etc.
Yep, that's absolutely right. Tomatoes, blueberries, I think currants as well. Grapes, yeah, those are all berries.
How about zucchini, Ray Bonto asks.
Yep, zucchini is also a berry, although again, that qualifies as being a pepo. That tends to relate more to a certain family of, that we'll talk about another time, called Cucurbitaceae, or the squash family. They have a specialized kind of a berry that we call a pepo, but they are berries.
I had a question myself. So you mentioned that with an accessory fruit like a strawberry, it's like considered false fruit because the majority of the part we eat was not made by the pistil. So does that mean that the strawberry didn't necessarily have to be pollinated to form the strawberry to make the fruity part that we eat?
That's a good question. I'd imagine it would still have to be pollinated, because even if the fleshy part didn't materialize, then the achenes themselves, or the pistils, would still need to mature into being that hard little fruit that we eat on the outside. Although you'll find that there are some strawberries or strawberry alikes that don't really have this big fleshy part. They tend to be a lot. Does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, thank you, Ivea.
One more question. Sorry, if you go back to that last.
Oh, yeah.
So the accessory fruit versus the aggregate fruit. The accessory fruit is formed. Could you tell me the difference again?
Sure thing. So in this case, well, okay, in this particular case, strawberries are both, but the accessory fruit is more, gosh, how do I distinguish between these two? I guess you could say that the aggregate fruit is where each of the little parts that have the fruit inside of it is kind of like a miniature form of other kinds of fruits that we find. So these could actually be qualified as drupelets or little drupes. And so then that's how that one works. And then the accessory fruit, meanwhile, has most of the fleshy part coming from a part that was not made by the ovary. But I'm not sure if I explained that very clearly. Sorry. Let me see here. Thought I had some notes that explain better. Does that sort of make sense though, or not so much?
Yeah, so the aggregate fruit is the actual, like each individual one could be like a little tasty fruit, whereas the accessory fruit, it's the real fruit is not that tasty. It's just like, looks like a seed on the outside, like a strawberry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's why the pomes count as an accessory fruit as well, is because the majority of the part we eat is the hypanthium, whereas we eat less of the actual former ovary. We eat the hypanthium. And so with the accessory fruit, we eat the receptacle. And so that's why they're called accessory fruits. But that might be kind of complicated. But yeah. And then we have one more kind, and that's our stone fruits. And like Crebonto said earlier, those are drupes. And so our drupes pretty much mean that we have a thin skin, a fleshy middle, and kind of a bony seed protector with a seed inside. And again, that's why avocados don't qualify, is because that they don't have a bony seed protector. What we see on the inside is just seed, all seed, with a very, very thin seed case. And so this is all made of ovary. This all comes from the pistil. Are there any questions? And I apologize that I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. I'm not sure why I'm having trouble. Sorry about that. I apologize for struggling today a little.
You're doing great, Ivea. I think the topic is complex. I think that's why.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I was trying, because I feel like I'm not explaining the difference between aggregate and accessory very well. But I'll try to explain it again once I can clarify a bit better. So thank you. I think this is all that I have for the fruits so far. Are you all ready for the final part of the day, which is the fun part that I think a lot of people like? The part where we play Spot the Plant Family Member. Here we go. And thank you to my amazing co-host Jasmine for helping me with the polls. Sometimes Zoom can be kind of confounding. So we'll do the game. And then after that, if people have time, I can also do a quick fruit demonstration where I'll cut up some fruits and we'll look on the insides so we can see all of this a bit more in practice. All right, here we go. Let's play Spot the Rosaceae, or Rosaceae, round 1. And then did the poll launch or not yet? Okay, that's okay. Sometimes, there we go. Thank you, Jasmine. And another thing is, don't worry too much about guessing right or wrong. I think with each of these, I care more about why people think a certain thing might or might not be in that family. Because once you begin to narrow down what you're seeing, once you're beginning to describe it, then that's the real practice. So feel free to guess. Don't worry about right or wrong answers. Instead, just focus on analyzing what you're seeing, is my suggestion.
It looks like all the polls are in, so I'm gonna end the poll.
Excellent. In that case, are you all ready to see the answer? And it was C. C is our plum. So out of curiosity, what told people that C was the Rosaceae?
It looked the most like the apple blossoms to me, or pear blossoms.
It does. Why else? Five
I
petals.
thought the leaves on the other ones didn't fit the description of the rose.
You're right. They don't quite fit. Instead of this one being an oval, this one has a few too many points on it.
Mhm.
And also, like you said, Sarah, 5 petals and lots of stamens. For me, the lots and lots of stamens is a big indicator. And yeah. So what tells people that the one here in the middle is not a rose?
Too many petals.
Too many petals. It might be hard to see.
Oh, it is 5.
But it's definitely hard to see because of how they kind of furl together, which is why I included it, is because it's tricky that way. But that's.
Sorry. I was thinking it was like the cluster of how clustered together the stamens are in the middle.
Yes, that's a huge indicator right there. The way that instead of it being all of the stamens kind of scattered around, instead all of the stamens here make sort of a tube or a pillar of stamens. This is characteristic of the mallow family, or the Malvaceae. So that's one big indicator that this is not a rose. And this one's a little bit harder, but what tells people that this one's not a rose? I think I saw Sarah saying that it doesn't
Number of petals.
Now this one also has 5 petals.
Oh, okay.
But it doesn't have the tons and tons of stamens. So there's that one as well. The reason why I included this one is because this is from the primrose family, which means it does look a little bit rose-like since it's from primrose. It's called Scarlet Pimpernel. And this one here is a hibiscus. Are you all ready for round 2? All right, here we go. Round 2 of Spot the Rosaceae. And again, remember, this is all practice. Also, if this one seems tricky, that's because it is. I wanted to imitate what nature does sometimes, and nature is like, ha ha, I'm gonna trick you today. And then we're like, okay, bring it to me. So I see we've gotten 15 out of 20 folks voting. I'll give folks maybe another 5 seconds if they want to guess. And it's okay if you don't want to, but also these are also anonymous, so don't be scared to guess. And all done. Are you ready to find out the answer? All right. It was A. A is our I'm going to have to be right back. My son decided to operate the oven and is kind of having an oven emergency. I'll let people, if people would like to, you can discuss what tells people that A was our Rosaceae. I'll be right back.
I was trying to decide between the A and the C, and
I was too.
guessed wrong. I did C, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at the shape of the leaves, the oval with the serrated.
but with the flower, it was a little hard to tell the stamens and the pistils.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the leaf was too serrated on false strawberry, but I guess that's something that it's the right amount of serration. So.
All right, I'm back. Nothing burned down. We're safe. So what were people talking about with A, out of curiosity?
I was looking at the shape of the leaf and the serration, the oval shape and the serrations on the leaf.
Very nice. And yep. And then I see in the chat somebody mentioned also the number of petals, that there are 5. Yep. For me, a big clue is the fuzzy center in this one, the mounds and mounds of pistils, and then all of the stamens on the outside. So the fuzzy center is what immediately makes me think rose when I see this. Now this one I decided to be tricky about because all of those petals make it look like it's an ornamental rose. It's a little different though. Does anybody happen to know this one?
Ranunculus.
That's right. This is ranunculus. Ranunculus is in a family that gets confused with roses a lot, the Ranunculaceae or buttercup family. So you might see here from the side. And again, I know I mentioned that not every member of Rosaceae has a hypanthium, but if it is our ornamental rose, they do. Our ornamental roses almost always have a hypanthium. And so this one is missing it. So that is another one. And then this one I really try to be tricky about. Oh, go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, can I just ask? So with the ranunculus, the buttercup, I know they grow wild in my garden, and they've got 5 petals and lots of stamens. So why are they not Rosaceae A or Rosaceae? How would I know the difference? Sorry if that's a really stupid question.
It's not at all, not at all. And especially because that's a family that I'm less familiar with. I know that when I looked inside of these, that there was some weird thing in the middle that I'm still not sure about. But the ones that aren't wild, one thing might be to look at the leaves and see if they have something called stipules. If you look at a rose that's cut, then you'll see that at the end of the leaf, they have this kind of extra little appendage in a rose, that they'll have an extra little appendage, but they won't have that in the ranunculus.
Okay.
It's
that's awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. I wish I had
Thank you. I'm learning so much. This is awesome.
My pleasure. And I apologize that I don't know more details about that, because that's a family that I really, really need to restudy. So I actually really appreciate that question about the ranunculus. So I'll have to check them out again. And then this one is a bit challenging, but what tells people that this one's not a rose? For me,
petals. Whoops, sorry.
The petals.
It does have 5 petals, although it's hard to tell because of how they.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. For me,
they're too organized.
Possibly too organized. For me, it's this middle right here that tells me, because yeah, the stamens there's a lot of them, but they all are a bit too neat and tidy about the way that they spread out from the middle. And the middle here, it has like, I'm not even sure how this pistil is put together, but it has this, it looks too solid to me. It's not like a mound, or it's not like a couple of wispy ones. It's like this thing in the middle instead. The reason why I included this one is because this is from the Cistaceae family, which is called the rock rose family. So once again, something called a rose that's not necessarily in the rose family. So this is Cistaceae right here. And so I include that because I can get them mixed up sometimes too, but the middle doesn't look quite right to me.
I think that's why I picked it, because I knew it was a rock rose and I didn't know if it was in the family.
And that's another reason why sometimes it can get really confusing, is because a lot of the common names will call things in ways that aren't necessary. Like, for example, a lot of things are called lily, but may not necessarily be an actual lily. But I kind of think that maybe it's maybe a badge of honor, or else maybe some sort of a way of saying, I think this flower is really, really pretty, when we call it either relating to a rose or a lily. So maybe I wonder if that's why we use some of our names so much. Are you all ready for the final round? Okay, here we go. Round 3. And again, no worries. This is just practice. I'll give folks another 5 seconds to vote. I think almost everybody has voted though. Are y'all ready to see the answer? Yeah? All right, here we go. Our answer is C, our toyon. I know that one is also challenging. I intentionally put A in here because they look so similar to each other. But do you notice something in A that is very different from C?
It almost looks like there's tiny flowers within the flowers, like little tiny white 5-petaled flowers with, bigger white petals around it.
You're absolutely.
I don't know how to explain it.
You explained it perfectly. You're absolutely right. There are little flowers within the bigger flower, and that's because this is from the Compositae family, also known as Asteraceae. This family is because there are multiple flowers within one big so-called flower. That's its defining characteristic. So you answered perfectly about what's different.
What is that one?
This is yarrow.
Oh, yarrow. Okay.
Yep, yarrow is a sunflower.
It's interesting to see it so close up without having the context of the bigger plant.
Yep.
That's kind of fun.
I love looking inside of yarrows because to me, it's like looking in and seeing an entire galaxy of stars. I love just looking inside and seeing all of the stars, the flowers inside of it. And then what do folks notice about this one?
4 petals.
4 petals, yep.
Also really like you said, organized stamens, not all over the place.
Yep. For anybody who was at class last week, does this plant look familiar to you? This is our family from last week.
Brassicaceae? Is it Brassicaceae? Yeah.
It is. This is Brassicaceae. Sometimes I like to include ones that we've already had before just to come back to them and review them, or just to have them around to say hi. So this is the one, this is from our family from last week, the Brassicaceae, or the mustard family, with our cruciferous petals, although this looks more like an H. And this one here, the Asteraceae, is one that we're going to cover in the future. So this is a glimpse of the future. And our final one here, what tells people that this one was the Rosaceae? I see 5 petals, yep.
Lots of stamen.
Yep, tons of stamens. It's a little bit hard to see, but does anybody see that there's sort of a little cup in some of our flowers? We have a slight little hypanthium, like our roses do. So this is another one. Last year I had a picture of a toyon, but the picture wasn't that great, so I tried to have a better one this time. So hopefully that is easier to see from last year. So that was our round 3. I have a recap and then I can demonstrate some fruits if folks would like to see. Our recap is that our rosaceous characteristics are that we have our 5 sepals, usually our 5 petals with some variations, although the ones we saw today were all 5 petaled. We have our numerous stamens. We have 1 to numerous pistils, not always numerous, but a lot of times. And so it makes kind of that fuzzy center that's characteristic. And we have, as we saw with our false strawberry, we have our oval leaves with our serrated edges and sometimes a little hypanthium. And so that was our family for today. Now I can take any questions that folks might have. And I can also do a quick little fruit demonstration if would folks like to see some fruit? Yeah. Okay, here we go. Just to go over the terms a little bit more. So, sorry. So first we were talking about our accessory fruit, I think. I have our strawberry. So I'm going to cut it open in just a second, but as you can see, the bits that we thought were seeds are actually the little pistils themselves, all grown up. And I'm going to cut the inside so that we can see. Also, does anybody know what this part is over here?
I guess it's the septals.
I think it is. Although this one seems to have a lot more than the ones I'm used to. And so I wasn't, that's something for me I'm still exploring about whether they're split or whether it just has a ton of them, whether the strawberries are special and different. The other thing that I noticed just a couple of weeks ago is can everybody see right here by the edges of the sepals? Can everybody see that there are some stamens hanging on?
Oh yeah.
Might be hard to see, but you can see it right there really clearly. There's one of them. There's a stamen that's hanging on. So
Cool.
really fun to see. I discovered that just a couple of weeks ago for the first time. I hadn't ever noticed it before. Then if we open up our fruit onto the inside, we have our strawberry, the receptacle, and you might notice, you see these little white lines, yeah? That each one goes to an individual fruit.
So cool.
Yeah, that was really cool too. Each of them go to the individual fruit. So that's our accessory fruit. Then we have a couple of aggregate fruits here too. Of course, we have our raspberry here. And a raspberry is pretty similar to our blackberry, except that the receptacle part on the inside, which we call I think it's the torus, that hangs onto the plant. So as a result, that just doesn't come off with it, which makes me wonder if this should really be called a false berry since we're eating mostly. Anyways, questions that the botanists never answer for me. So the difference being that this one keeps its receptacle, it holds on. So we'll look at this one too. Oh, cool. One thing that's kind of neat is that I'm not sure whether those are parts of the pistil or whether those are parts of the sepals, but you see that there's this little parts that hang on. So I might want to be looking at that a bit more. And then here is our inside with our receptacle. And then each of these little packets is like an individual little tiny drupe with our seed on the inside. Just for fun. And then, so those were those ones. And then for fun, I was going to have us look at one of our poems. So one thing you might notice is that we have our stem over here on this side. And so you might be wondering, where are the flower parts? Well, the flower parts that remain are on the other side. These right here are our little sepals, and the petals have already fallen off. And that's because, again, if you picture it growing, then originally this would have been our stem where the flower was. And this would have been the hypanthium. And then our petals would have been up here. But our hypanthium was, of course, really small. And so then it swelled up really big. And something cool that I saw for the first time the other day when I was really looking is, I love this. This is just the coolest to me. So here is our inside. And I love that you can see that bottom shape of what used to be the ovary, the bottom of the vase of the pistil, by seeing the inside of the core. So this bit in here, this is the true fruit. This is the part that used to be the pistil on the inside, where you see the lines here. And all of this on the outside is hypanthium. Cool, huh?
Yeah.
You can even see where it would have, where everything else would have come out. So this is the bottom of it. And then of course we have the seeds. So I just thought that was extra cool to see that and to see the shape of it, especially. I was just like, ah, magic. And then one last one, we have our stone. And like I said, there's other stones that aren't necessarily in Rosaceae. An example of that would be mango. It also has a bony seed protector on the inside. So a mango is also a stone, although it's not in the Rosaceae family. That one's in the poison oak family and Accardiaceae. So we have our drupe. Yeah. So with this one, I'm not seeing any sepals on this other side, which makes me think that they were probably up here and they probably fell off. So that means that our flower would have grown up being like this with all of the flower parts under here. And then our ovary would have expanded like this. So this is all ovary. None of this is from a different flower part. And then this here, it's not the seed itself. Our pit here is the seed protector, and the actual seed is on the inside, but it's really hard to cut into. And so that's how that separates out from an avocado. I like also seeing the other side of the way that it used to kind of connect together. Someday I'll have to look more deeply into that and just how it, yeah. I like the way that it all kind of filled in the spots. So yeah, those are our fruits. Are there any questions? Oh, yes, Dana.
Do you know why stone fruit has a seed protector and other fruits don't? Like, is there a reason for that?
I wonder the same thing. I don't know, but I can have a guess. And that's that I'm guessing that because these are so fleshy, I'm not sure if they were equally fleshy before we cultivated. I'm imagining they probably had a bunch of flesh. My guess is that the fleshy bits really attracted animals to eat them, so that way the animals would eat them and help disperse them. And the seed protector was probably to make sure that it either survived the digestive trip or it survived being put somewhere completely different. So that's my guess about why they might have this bony seed protector. Or maybe the conditions were very harsh where they were. I'm not sure though, but I like that question a lot, and I'd be curious to look more into that too. So, and yep, to my knowledge, olives are also a drupe. So yeah, you're right, Rebonte. Are there any other questions? I know I kept everybody a little bit over today. I try to be more on time next time. But thank you all for going down the fruit rabbit hole with me.
Awesome.
That was really fun. So I think that's all I had for today. I'll let people go now. I hope if you do any sort of homework this week, it's that I hope you go out and find your favorite fruit and enjoy it. And just appreciate it and celebrate. And if you feel up to it, you can do some nature journaling of it, but mostly just enjoy it. So that's all for today. And I will hopefully see y'all next week. Oh, yes, Rebonto.
So just a pun for blackberries, we can say that a guard had some brain problem and he grew very aggressive, and then he kicked a tree, all the peaches fell on him, and he grew angry with them, so he stuck them to him, and then he died of the brain problem and the peaches. So many stone fruits.
That's awesome.
I love it. Especially like what you said about the blackberries making him aggressive, like the aggregate fruit.
Ah.
I love your puns, Raybonto. Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. Raybonto reminds me, puns are always welcome. This is a pun-friendly zone. So if people ever want to say ridiculous plant puns, then they always make me super duper duper happy. Okay, I think that was all I had.
And you can add that the stone with he drooped from the attack by the blackberries that were aggressive.
I was thinking that too. After all the stone fruits fell, then he drooped his head because they all hurt so much when they hit him. Oh, and also I'm going to tell you one that Susan told me, and a bunch of you might have already heard. What do you call a group of crows eating a strawberry?
An accessory for murder.
Yes, an accessory for murder. Yeah, or I guess a strawberry being eaten by a bunch of crows would be an accessory for, yeah.